Good morning. So we have the Art of Execution framework, which is a bunch of principles. Then the question is, how do you know these principles actually work? Here we have a case study of a pervasive, rampant organizational dysfunction, process disintegration, and bad quality being delivered to the customers. The premise is that the Art of Execution framework can help you to create operational excellence, OPEX, if you adopt the principles. Now, the question is, do you agree this is a proven silver bullet to use process improvement to transform the situation? How we see the problem dictates what we think the solution will be. So if you see the problem as people being lazy, uncooperative, then the solution will be to fix the people. If you see the problem as processes, then the solution is to design error-free and efficient processes. So the ability to look at the big picture, let's call it the leader's edge skills, where we look at the organizational structure, systems, processes, and the systems for performance appraisal, for onboarding, for training, for communication, decision making, all of those structural things that lead to the culture or the behavior or the habits of the organization. What to do is leadership, and how to do it is management, and the process ninja skills is how to fix it. Once you think you can clearly see what the actual problem is, and I'm calling it a plague because in some cases it is very confusing when you come into a, say, a multinational corporation or even a company with 1,500 or plus or more people. It is not that easy to see clearly what the root cause of the problem is because there are daily fires to fight. Cohesive skills is to work with the different organizational groups in such a way that there is synergy and not infighting or resistance or combat, and you can achieve organizational stoop. The birds of prey, such as the peregrine falcon, when they go into a stoop, when they fold their wings and going for a free dive towards their prey, they can go up to 245 miles per hour, the fastest animal on earth. And the question is, what can we do to create an organizational stoop where the organization aging is nil? Like when an organization response time is very slow, there's organizational senility or decay. And the opposite of that is an organizational stoop. So we will also look at that. And the last point is the last pillar of the Art of Execution framework is the ability to work with yourself. If you are an ex-Marine, if you are a tough guy, or you have been in corporate America for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and typically we go into power struggle and we drive out the opposition, or we only trust the people that we know from the past and we bring them in. If that turns out not to be the solution or the ideal solution as to what the problem really is, then the question is, can you adopt the right disposition to do the job correctly according to the principles? And if not, either you will leave or somebody will have to remove you, or the company will continue to be in a state of dysfunction and the business culture will continue to deteriorate instead of improving. So at this point, I can be talking to a student, to a college student, to a high school student, to a fresh professional, a new professional who just graduated from college and just recently joined the workforce, or to somebody who's been a project manager for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, or to the C-suite, or to the CEO. I believe the material here is of certain depth. So the Dr. Deming, the father of TQM, Total Quality Management, said that the best system will beat a good person every time. And I think that is clear. If you show up in a company and there's no documentation, the users don't have user guides, and the computer systems do not have systems documentation, and there's no coding standard, there's no design documents, there are no design documents. In such a situation, doesn't matter how good a person is, the person may be a Six Sigma master black belt, the person will not be able to change the situation because we have a bad system and that will beat a good person every time. I think this is common sense. But the question is not who done it, not who screwed up, but how is it done now? Yes, the people who messed up in the past are responsible. They are guilty. They may be criminals. They may be whatever, lazy, and so on. But that doesn't help. What helps is what is currently being done to produce the work and how should it be done. That's really a universal question. Anytime you go into any situation, whether it's a family, a company, a nonprofit, a multinational, a small mom and pop, everything comes down to the production process that delivers the goods and services to the end customers who will pay for it. In the case of government organization where you get, let's say, $8 billion a year from the government every year, regardless of what you do or how you do it, then that level of accountability and feedback, customer feedback, is no longer there, and that allows the organizational dysfunction to continue that much longer. So here, right, when somebody is doing the wrong thing very well, that actually is a bad thing. So we need to know what the right thing to do is, and then be able to do the thing right. Dr. Deming is saying that here. Jack Welch made GE powerful and famous through their Six Sigma program, and that is directly connected to Dr. Deming's work from the 1950s. And then another thing people tend to say, oh yeah, that's for manufacturing, that's for banking, that's for healthcare, that's for telecommunications, that's for automobile manufacturing assembly lines. Yes, each industry has its own specific nuances, but the principles of processes are the same. The principles of production, just like how the gravity will predictably, repeatably produce the results that you look for, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what time of the day it is, on which continent, which city, gender, culture, it cuts across everything. Gravity is going to work. If somebody jumps off a tall building, the outcome is predictable. The person will fall. All right, and the same thing with the principles of organizational effectiveness. For example, the freeway is all clogged up during the rush hour, and then you try to bring in the best drivers that you have known from the past. They cannot unclog the freeways. Why not? Because the problem is not with the drivers. The problem is with the freeway system and the number of cars we have. People going to the same direction at the same time. That's called a systems problem or a common cause. The problem is created by a common cause. And the freeway is not owned by driver A or B. The freeway is owned by the state. Or if it's an interstate freeway, then it's owned by the federal government. Therefore, Dr. Deming said, focus on the system, not the team. When he showed up in Japan in 1946 for the first time, And he went back and started to teach statistics and quality in 1950. He said to focus on the system and not to focus on the team, because workforce, they own different pieces of the end-to-end production process: engineering, shipping, design, quality control, all of the, and for example, finance. So all of these functional teams, they do not own the end-to-end process. It is management or leadership that owns the end-to-end process. And the VP of finance and VP of engineering and VP of manufacturing, they each have their own priority. And the only person who can dictate or specify or propose priorities for all the VPs would be the CEO. So unfortunately, it has to go to the top for it to be really effective. However, like everything else in life, there is variation. From the darkest night to the brightest day, there are two extreme endpoints and a continuum of brightness in between. Same thing with process improvement, same thing with everything in duality. So here, Dr. Deming is saying the production problems or the quality issues are due to the systems and processes rather than the employee. And somewhere it says 85%, somewhere you see 93%, sometimes you see 97% of the problems are due to the system. Basically, that's saying an individual worker or a single driver cannot fix the problem. If the driver is drunk, yes, if we remove the driver, the problem is solved immediately. But if you remove any number of people, but the problem still remains, that means you have a common cause problem. Do not solve it as a specific cause. Now we'll keep on repeating these principles and concepts in the next few minutes. So Deming, so who is he? So it's not so much about listening to Dr. Deming, but to look at the principles, right? When you hear something, you think about it, you validate it against your experiences in the past, and you try it out if you are not convinced based on observation alone. Usually the principles are more like common sense, but in this case, we're just going to use Dr. Deming because in the past, he had accomplished some great results, especially with the Japanese. So let's take a look at who he is, right? The Deming Award was established in 1951, and if you look at it from 1951 to nowadays, 2019 coming up, it's about 70 years have passed. And this award until today is the highest award a Japanese company can give for quality. He is revered, at a very high place in Japan today. So why? What has he done for those people? Granted that the Japanese culture is different. Toyota, some of their vendors, their suppliers can drop off their parts, and the parts will go straight onto the assembly line without being counted, inspected, tagged, or stocked. So that means there's absolute trust. That means Toyota says to the vendors or the suppliers that, go ahead, I will trust my annual bonus to you, my raise to you, my savings, my retirement funds, my children's college fund, by giving this level of trust to somebody else to take their parts and put them directly onto the assembly line. So that kind of integrity and honor may not be in every single culture that's understood. So what has worked in Japan may not work in the US, which hasn't, on many occasions, as proven in the past, even with Dr. Deming's effort to work with the American companies. However, the principles, if we distill all of this down to the principles of process and the principles that production quality is a result of the input, the raw supplies you get, plus your production processes that gives you your output. So these are basic principles, and we can work with basic principles. And by beating up somebody on the assembly line because you don't like them or because that's your habit, to go after people whom appear to be incompetent and so on, that actually can be the very wrong thing to do and be counterproductive and destructive. And it's ironic, right? When they talk about quality improvement the Japanese way, and the foundation of that is really based on this American man who worked in Japan, and the Union of Scientists and Engineers of Japan came up with the Deming Prize. And here is a review at this point. 94% of the problems are caused by 6% of the problems in business are systems driven. Only 6% are people driven. And so what that means is 6% are special cause. Yes, there are some people who need training, who need to be removed, but it's only 6%, and that's not where you begin. Because if you can get 60 or 70% of the people in the company at a certain level, then the majority will make a difference, will change and shift the company culture. And let's look at the history of Six Sigma. Motorola started to work with Six Sigma in around 1990s. Total quality management came on the scene. Statistical process control in the 1970s. And Dr. Deming with his 4 points and the 7 deadly diseases come out in 1950. So that's about 70 years in the making. And the reason I can still refer to them is because if they are universal principles, then they are timeless, like the gravity. And if you look at quality, right, anything we provide to the customers, may they be patients, members of a health plan, or banking customers, or insurance companies, you name it. Dr. Deming in 1950 put this on the blackboard in Japan. You have input from the suppliers, and then you have the process, and you have the consumers, and consumers will give you feedback, and you design and redesign. It's basic, so it goes output equals input plus process. Very simple, right? Not common sense here. And when you plan out all of these production processes and the input and the output and the feedback, you have plan, then you have do, then you have check, then you have act, PDCA. Again, it's fairly common sense. And if you take a look at this is 2017 and 2018. Also, they had the Deming Prize award. The right quality and uniformity are foundations of commerce, prosperity, and peace. Dr. Deming said this. So this is a very profound thing, right? The obligation of management, according to Dr. Deming, is to give quality to the customers and to give work to the workers. So when we screw up, when we don't do the right thing, we hurt the customers or the members or the patients and the doctors and the providers or the people who deposit money in our bank. And not only that, we waste the talent and the ambition of the people in the company who want to do good by thinking that they are lazy, they are negligent, they take their bonuses, sit in big offices for years, and they don't correct the problem. And that naturally can invoke a righteous indignation towards the people. However, that's not where the problem lies. If you believe in these principles, and these are proven principles and worked in many different places. So let's look at the organizational transformation process. The CEO commits to improve processes. This is the first step. Ideally speaking, is the CEO, because all the VPs are responsible for different functional areas, and they have their own priorities and their own measurements of success. Only the CEO can propose a company-wide, enterprise-wide goal and priority and a way of doing things. And we understand if the CEO cannot participate or the C-suite will not participate, it is better to do something than to do nothing. And because of variation and diversity in people's skills and different situations of different companies, we understand that the CEO may not be involved. But that pretty much means the enterprise level initiative is going to fail, but there still can be some benefit to some pockets of the company. And again, ideally speaking, the C-suite actually understand the principles, and rather than just paying lip services to it and delegate it to somebody else, some external some external consultants or some consulting company to do quality. They actually learn it, they actually apply it, they actually demonstrate the effectiveness of the key process principles by the C-suite. And then, ideally speaking, in Citigroup, when I went through this with the ex-chairman John Reed, it was a 3-day workshop. Was it 2 day or 3 day? 2-day workshop, and he trained. He conducted the first 2-day training workshop, and that was recorded and sent around 100 plus countries in which Citigroup had offices in. And then, after the CEO trains the C-suite, who then train the respective functional teams, team leads, and so on. And the C-suite will actually lead in the process, design, and improvements. So it's more than lip service, rubber stamping, but actually embodying it. Why is this important? This is important if the CEO leaves. In the US, I heard that the average lifespan of a CEO in a company is about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and the CIO is about the same, 4 or 5 years. So as the C-suite people turn over, if you want the culture of quality to continue, we need to drive it top down and to instill it into the culture and into the performance appraisal system, onboarding system. So all the structures and empowerment devices would be put in place to institutionalize this as champions come and go. And we must observe the proper organizational change management, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement, so it actually becomes an organizational habit. And that's what we are going to need for the quality to be there, and rather than beating on the people. So by looking at this, who are the bottlenecks on the critical path? The bottleneck basically is the C-suite, beginning with the CEO. So if this is common sense, how come it is not commonly practiced in many different companies? My take is that because of our righteous indignation and punitive emotional habits, where we are so sure who are the criminals who have created the dysfunction, we do not go past that. The emotional reaction and the habits take over, especially for people who are good with hammers and everything is a nail. So our childhood habits, our military experience, our past experiences in corporate America, if we are accustomed to power struggle, which is the norm, then we will not go beyond our habitual response and habitual solution. And once again, we must go past that, and by applying the principles or processes, we will generate the organizational STOOP, which is to travel at the highest velocity towards quality. Musashi Miyamoto says, truth is not what you want it to be, truth is what it is. Gravity is what it is, and it works with or without your agreement, with or without your understanding. And same thing with the principles of quality. They work with or without your agreement or understanding, or even having heard of it, or surround yourself with people who may or may not know it. So if you do not connect to the principles and bend to its power, because if you don't agree with gravity and you jump off a building, the outcome is predictable. So basically, you will live a lie, right? Therefore, it's important to look for the truth, because the truth will set you free. Dr. Deming said, leadership is not merely to find and record failures of man, but to remove causes of failure, especially from the system, and to help people to do a better job with less effort. We know this is true. This is really common sense. Now, the spirit of AIKI, harmonious energy, the energy of harmony. If somebody is falling down, the most harmonious thing to do is to break their fall, to catch them before they hit the ground, or somehow help them to cushion. so they don't break their wrists, nose, chin, or head. And same thing with the company, stumbling with people struggling. The most harmonious thing to do is to help people from falling, and if they are doing the wrong things with bad habits, begin to introduce and infuse the correct principles so the right thing is done. And this book out of the crisis, it's probably 40, 50, 60 years old at least. I need to go back and see when it was first published. None of this is new. So once again, if it's common sense, how come it is not done? Why it seems to be missing in some organizations? Even though years have passed since the C-suite or the new C-suite have been on the ground, and yet there are no process improvements visible at the ground level in many of the teams. And before we go any further, all of this is about changing, about seeing the truth and adapting to the truth. And Dr. Deming says it is not necessary to change because you don't have to survive. That brings up the next issue, the major issue facing the U.S. industries. Because of the mobility of management, the 4 to 5 year lifespan, common average duration of tenure for the C-suite. Therefore, there's short-term focus in the U.S. versus what they have in Japan. I personally worked in Citigroup at one point for 28 years continuously. That's because I started out in this R&D, research and development, and became CDC's Citigroup Development Center. So basically, I was in this very stable environment, and that kind of created my disposition to look at things more proactively in longer terms, even when I could go to a company only for 6 months or for a year. But the lens I use is very much a long-term lens because of my background. And if somebody came from the military, came from corporate America, they obviously cannot help but to use the lenses from their past. So we are talking about paradigms here and about paradigm shifting to a correct paradigm aligned with the correct universal principle. Just so the viewers don't think that we are being naive here. Sometimes some people benefit and profit from chaos, contracting for millions of dollars for years or in multi-year contract can be very lucrative. The state of Oregon Obamacare failed, and the state of Oregon sued Oracle for racketeering. I think like $240 million was the amount. Eventually, Oracle settled and paid some millions of dollars to the state of Oregon. So there is corruption, there is racketeering, and so on. Okay, so if that's the root cause, Deming cannot help, and the out of execution framework cannot help. However, it will help you as a worker bee in those environments to use the out of execution framework to understand the big picture, to understand what needs to be done, to understand what you can do, and to be able to control yourself, control your mind, control your reactions, so you can stay in play. Because if you are taken out of play, then you are no longer effective in any given situation. I have seen some people, they hijack organizations for egotistical purposes. That's my interpretation, my projection. Of course, we are here for the money, can have, good food, good travel, good per diem, good, nice corner offices with nice views. So yes, if somebody is intentionally taking the organization for a joyride, and they are not really interested to do the right thing to serve the customers because they will be there only for 1, 2, 3, 4 more years, then they are gone. They don't really care. In that case, you can only use out of execution as a worker bee for yourself, and don't say too much because they will take you out. They will put you on probation, give you performance improvement plan PIP, and so on. In that case, don't talk to the C-suite. And in some cases, territories, right? When there's a turnover of the C-suite, when there's a turnover of a senior director, somebody new comes in, what they do is they begin to remove all the people who were affiliated with the previous regime. And you see that politically in countries, in governments, in um, companies, in teams, in everywhere, right? Then if the goal is to exterminate the outsiders, then remember what Dr. Deming said. The problem is with the system. And when you begin to destroy the teams, that means you are removing people who have local knowledge, who understand the players, who understand the systems and processes indigenously, the local systems with its own acronyms, own failings, own idiosyncrasies. Those things can take 1 to 4 years to learn, to become a connector with local understanding of the systems, to the point where you can actually impact end-to-end processes. That takes 1 to 4 years, depending on how helpful the people are, who the local people are in transferring knowledge to you, and how much documentation there is. So exterminating people who are not on your team, in your gang, it really is not a good thing to do, because we go to work, not to. I mean, there is a point that you want to bring people that you trust, but there should be a limit, and the goal really should be to improve the process. Tiger sharks, the embryos, they have full-grown teeth, believe it or not. While they are in the womb, they eat up other baby sharks as a way to protect the lineage, right? Again, people do the similar things, and we shouldn't be doing that. That's my opinion. And then there's always power struggle, sibling rivalry, and the hyenas, the baby hyenas, oftentimes only one of them emerge from the den after killing the other one, and the one that's emerged has scars on the body from the fight, right? So all of this it worsens the dysfunction, it destroys the process further, and the chaos is going to continue. And then the 3 to 5 to 6 years average span of a CEO, CIO, COO, CFO, CMO, whatever, time is up, then they are gone, and the next person comes in, then they bring their own people, then the power struggle continues, and nobody ever really is able to get to the fundamental process skills and improving the end-to-end process in the company. So why did I choose Musashi Miyamoto on talking about the truth? You must bend to the truth or live to a lie. Because I think this fits the corporate America mentality. It's fairly militant, fairly cutthroat, fairly, if you are not for me, then you are against me. If I don't know you from the past, then I cannot trust you. And then, so it's KBK, kill or be killed. Very much practiced by the martial artists. So the reason that I'm using a more militaristic theme in this presentation is because that's based on my observation. That's what's going on with the people in corporate America. So why Musashi? He fought 60 plus duels. That means he won every single one of them, and he had his first kill when he was 13. And strategy, right? Sanzi said the same thing. So for leaders' edge skills, you have to look at the big picture. If you don't look at the picture, if you don't look at things on a large scale, you cannot have strategy, so to speak. So here I'm talking about looking past our personal paradigm, personal habits, and look at what's actually needed on the situation. Whether you believe in Deming or not, look at the universal principles and look at the production processes and see if you cannot be convinced that's the right thing to do. And once you're convinced what the right thing to do is, can you do it? Should you leave? Should you change yourself? Should you continue what you are doing, or wait until you are removed, or wait until you retire and leave the job with your pot of gold? And for people who are interested in improving dysfunctional situations and dysfunctional processes, you will meet resistance. There will be naysayers. People by and large are pretty much watching it for me. They want to have, grandstanding, visibility, promotion, importance, big title, big office, big bonus, big raises. So if you are trying to push process, realize that Many people may be unhappy with you. So after the focus on process, then the next step is on training. Then the question is why? Why should I be going for training when these people are lazy, they are losers, they are incompetent, they are screwed up, they don't have proper education, they don't have the analytical skill, they don't have the computer skills. But remember, after Pearl Harbor happened, there were questions, and the questions were raised as to how come this was not prevented? How come we were caught unaware, right? But then the commanding officer at that time said, let's just focus on preparing rather than trying to go after the people. In Citigroup, my site was being shut down, and even though the site was being shut down, the person who came from New York to shut the place down, Mitchell, he actually brought green belt training for everybody on site. Everybody got a Six Sigma green belt book. Not everybody went for the Six Sigma certification, but everybody was given the training, and 98%, 95% of the people actually left the company. And until today, I'm grateful to them for what they did, because whether you are staying with the company or not, they were trying to empower you and enable you with certain sets of skills and principles. That's win-win. And of course, we can take somebody, bash them over the head, throw them out on the street. But remember, the companies and your reputation will precede you, and a kinder, gentler company who have enabled and empowered and helped people is much stronger than somebody who is known to be a a gangster, a hatchet man, a downsizer, but from each to his own, right? So we we face a choice. Do we train the existing staff, or do we bring in somebody from the outside who already have the process skills? But remember, you need two things to be a connector. You need skills, generic process skills, organizational skills. You also need specific local indigenous insights. And each one of those areas can take years to acquire proficiency in. Therefore, I agree with what Dr. Deming said, is focus on the systems and train the people, design the processes and improve the processes. And one more plug, Sanzi said, rather than destroying a city or an army, it is better to capture them whole without destroying anything. Who is the enemy to quality, right? So the solution are the principles. So we are kind of reviewing now. Predictable, repeatable results come from principles such as gravity. If you agree that the principle for quality is the production processes plus the input. If you agree output equals input plus process, that means we should subjugate, as in theory of constraint, everything else to those highest goals, right? If the goal is to take flight, then the number one principle is to defy gravity, and that means you must have enough thrust to create the lift to overcome the drag so you can take flight. And so everything else will be subjugated, be subordinated to that guiding principle of flight. And we talked about common cause versus special cause. Google it, YouTube it if you don't have a clear connection to it yet. Reviewing, the leadership owns the systems, and the cross-functional teams, they work on different aspects of the systems. That's why we have to go to the leadership and management who own the systems. Focus on training staff to remove variation, to have so basic hands-on process level skills should be part of everybody's skill set, beginning with the CEO, the C-suite, the senior directors, the VPs, the directors, the managers, and all the worker bees. Everybody should have a basic set of skills, including to design processes which are error-free and efficient. Efficiency means no NVAs, no non-value added activities. So we resolve problems via training, and so they have the skills to fix the processes. So we talked about this already. All right, let's look at General MacArthur when he left Japan. Take a look at this, right? Here we have a general from an enemy occupational force, and when the person is leaving the country, the civilians line the streets to say goodbye to him, waving flags. And General MacArthur wanted war with China and so on, and President Truman had to relieve him or fire him. And it is fair a soldier would do what the soldier is conditioned to do, which is to win the war. But not everything is a war, especially in corporate America. For those people who are used to power struggle, infighting, throwing people out, bashing people on the head, chasing people all over the place. I personally don't really understand it, but I have seen it in Citigroup. It's a long story. When Sandy Weil, the new CEO, came in, the co-CEO, co-chairman, whatever his title was, with John Reed, and John Reed was driven out, and then basically the travelers, top level, C-level people came in, and then they started to systematically putting their own people in place. Anyways, but the existing people, some of them were competent. And not everybody goes to work for egotistical reasons, to power struggle, to have lineage concerns, to have sibling rivalry, because work by definition is a place where you do work, right? You go and do work. And the popularity of General MacArthur, who established an environment in which Dr. Deming was able to go to Japan and to teach quality. And during that time, martial arts such as karate in Japan was banned, and Aikido was allowed because Aikido allegedly brings about peace and promotes peaceful disposition and habits and tendencies in people. Walter Wriston, the ex-CEO of Citigroup, said, "The person who figures out how to tap into the collective genius of everybody in the organization is going to blow away the competition." So that's the truth of collective genius, the principle. So basically you will align, this is a review, organizational structure, processes and systems, and you empower people, create conditions of empowerment. So like Dr. Deming said, then people can succeed and thrive and do a good job, and because they do a good job, there will be prosperity and there will be peace. And not only that, we are in the business of a health plan, then people who are sick, they are being taken care of. Do the doctors know what's wrong with them? What's their condition? What kind of prescriptions are they on? Are they violent? Are they contagious? All of those information will help the patients, will help the doctors, will help the government, will help the health plans. These are very important things. But oftentimes we lose sight of work, and we become gangsters, and we spend years fighting. And I don't mean to be judgmental. This is a perception. I may be totally naive and totally wrong. I have 37 years in corporate America, and I'm a disciple of principles and processes. I don't really understand power struggle. I don't really understand the greed aspect of things, because I personally don't go for money or don't go for power. I have never chosen that path, even since I was very young, 25, 27, when I had plenty of opportunities to access money and power. So anyways, slash, eject, and burn. Remember, when we do that, we erase the knowledge, local knowledge, and we destroy loyalty. And people who really want to make a difference, like Dr. Deming said, people who are eager to make a contribution, they tend to leave the company at that point. And you can say, good riddance, this is America. Anybody can go anywhere they want to go. If you cannot have that attitude and establish a deep, stable workforce who really understand the systems and who are loyal to the systems, and then the dysfunction continues. We cannot empower scared, disenfranchised staff, and this C-level person was referring to the workforce as Mother F something, you, that cannot lead to empowerment, even if you try, because if a person's fundamental attitude is like that, it will come out. People cannot go up to somebody and says you are an a-hole and expect people to be encouraged and enthusiastic about making contributions. And it is true that some people may appear to be losers or a-holes where they allow certain kind of dysfunction to happen in their work. But remember, their work is part of the production processes. If somebody keeps on dropping broken glasses on the ground continuously, the sweeper cannot ever get to a clean floor, and therefore we cannot say the sweeper is lazy, incompetent, or an a-hole or a loser, because the system is set up in such a way that the sweeper cannot win. So enough about this. This is all different types of dysfunction, right? So 2 to 8. Points 2 through 8 is what continues and exacerbates the dysfunction. Dr. Deming, when he went to Japan, he told the Japanese, if you follow my principles and my systems, in 5 years, your quality will dominate the world, and they did it in 4 years, okay? So if somebody has been on the ground for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and they have not succeeded, they may want to take a look at their paradigms, and maybe shift to a different paradigm aligned to the principles of quality. And Dr. Deming has 14 points. This is a live link. All of this, the 7 deadly diseases, or is it 5? And 14 points. They are on YouTube, in the internet, Google. That information is being around for 70 years. Review. Remember, if we do management by objective, O is historical. And if a manager is managing history, the manager is a bystander. And many PMOs fail. They centralize, decentralize in Toyota, in Amgen, Citigroup, Molina, LA Care health plans, because if you cannot clearly show a value add with what you do, if a PMO focuses on checking a checklist, checking off items on a checklist, doing templates, offering templates, coming up with nice fancy slides, gold plating, presentations, those are all waste. They don't really add any value, and project management to begin with is an overhead. So in that case, you render yourself a wasteful organization in terms of the PMO, then you get disbanded. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to manage the critical path, to make sure the project is successful. Project managers should be accountable for the success of a project, and not just for checking items off a checklist and gold plating presentations and weekly status reports. And if a project manager is caught between too much work to resolve complex issues on the project, to come to clarity on dependencies, especially external dependencies, and has no time, at that point, a higher priority must be given to stopping the project from failing, then to check the items off a checklist, or to gold plate status reports and schedule reporting and slides. This is, I think it's common sense, but it is not practiced. So production is end-to-end process owned by leadership. This is review now. The agile approach, right? Small O versus the big O. You deliver the smallest customer visible, customer usable feature as quickly as possible, iteratively, right? So this is the latest craze. But regardless whether it's agile or waterfall or overlapping waterfall, the principles are the same, right? So the only difference between waterfall and agile is where we make the output smaller and more frequently. So let's look at why, if these things, if we look at the principles and common sense, it's fairly easy, but in reality, it is very, very difficult. When the Japanese babies are sitting in the baby strollers, watching the adults, grown-ups bow to each other, the neurons in their brain which are responsible for bowing are also firing. So this biological trait is based on the mirror neurons in the brain, which exist in primates, in monkeys and human beings. Because to be able to fit in socially is very important for survival of a primate, a monkey or a human being. Therefore, mirror neurons are built into the human physiology. And not only that, if you spend all your life talking with your hands as in Rome or in Italy, then those habits are deeply ingrained in your makeup, in how you see the world, in who you are. And the taxi drivers in London, they have to memorize the entire, maps, the streets and the alleys and the names of hotels and so on. They have to memorize all of it. As a result, their hippocampi, that part of the brain, is actually enlarged. So we have to understand culture is actually engraved into your brain. The patterns of your brain will actually change based on your habits, based on physiology, and how difficult it is to change that. You have to go through a lot of, first you have to be aware. You have to, oh, there's a different paradigm than my paradigm. Then you have to be able to shift the paradigm. Then you have to be able to acquire the new habit. And you have to repeatedly, and now at this point you are restraining yourself from lashing out or from doing some habitual things which have become automatic responses, unconscious behavior where you don't even know that you are biting your nails or picking your nose as you are talking to people, right? So this is monumental. It's almost impossible to overcome. It takes a real Superman to go through this kind of personal transformation, and it would take a long time, years and decades, and especially when somebody, I was at this all hands meeting, and there was a panel for the C-suite, and the question was asked to the COO about how come the CIO is not allowing the company staff to access Yahoo from through the company workstations. And his first reaction, I'm not faulting him, it's an observation, was, who asked that question? So that's basically telling people, well, don't ask stupid questions or you're going to have your head bitten off, or you're going to get yourself bashed and punched against the wall, choked and thrown out onto the street, right? So that would be a common reaction to such a behavior to somebody who has power. Therefore, you will not do it. And therefore, the principles of operational excellence will never get to you. All these alignments and empowerment and setting priorities to have process trainings and aligning the people with the CEO aligning. So unless the C-suite wants to do it, it's going to be very, very difficult. However, if you are just a worker bee, a programmer or project manager, you can still apply the principles within your circle of influence. Stop looking at your circle of concern. YouTube, Dr. Kavi, circle of influence, habit number 1, being proactive. And you will see some very good description by Dr. Kavi himself. So in the ideal state, in the variation of this duality, the empowered state is each person is motivated to do the right thing, to serve the customers, to have quality, to have prosperity and peace, and skillful. And then we have error-free end-to-end processes, and we have organizational buying and institutionalized quality principles. That's the ideal situation. Here's the brain of a taxi driver enlarged, and here's the neural pathway. The more you practice something, the more efficient it becomes. And then the question is, do we practice impeccable communication? Impeccable communication. The 4 Agreements by Don Luis Miguel. Look that up. It's good stuff. Prioritize. So we need to focus. We cannot improve all the processes all at the same time. It's not possible. Once again, Musashi, right? Focus on the highest priority activities and focus on that. And again, I'm using Musashi as an example only because he seems to fit corporate America. Otherwise, he's the last person I would bring in for process improvement. And then for those who are struggling with habits and righteous indignation and saying this is a bunch of hogwash, this is wrong. If you can see what the right thing to do is, and you are not able to do it, and you don't want to do it, at that point, this principle comes into play. True victory is the victory over the self, over myself. If I need to be kind and gentle to my wife or to my friends or to my daughter or to my brother-in-law, to my brother, to my mother, if that's the right thing to do, but I cannot do it, and the person that has to change is me, right? And it's very difficult. Subordinate all activities to the guiding principle, so we bow down to the truth, or we live a lie. Subjugate the ego to foster the guiding activities. Do not intimidate people because they will stop talking to you. Even people who don't really bash me too many times. Jerry, why are you doing that? Stop doing that. This person yelled at me in one of the deployment WebExes we had a couple of 3 years ago. Um, I never confront the person, but I'm always wary. I'm always cautious. I'm always on guard because I know the person was raised in such a situation that the person will go into emotional flooding, emotional hijacking, and I really don't want to deal with that. So oftentimes I try to avoid the person as much as I can, and the person isn't even my superior, right? So this is just how life goes. And power corrupts, and to be able to be humble, Jim Collins, in the book From Good to Great, he researched many companies to find out why some companies become great. And he says those leaders for those companies have two qualities. They have a burning vision for the future that's correct, and then they are humble. They allow synergy to take place, like what Walter Wriston says. The person who can tap into the collective genius of the organization. Through intimidation, the collective genius cannot come into play. Through continually driving out people, heavy infighting, synergy cannot come to play. It will be dog eat dog world. The law of the swamp is going to prevail, and the oasis will never come into being when those principles are at play. And President Lincoln was called a damn fool. And when he left the soldier, he said to this person who called him a damn fool, and he said, I'm glad to see you know how to talk to a civilian. The power of humility. Human tendencies, we are, robust in our ego, self-confident. We believe we are right, the creator's complex. We are righteous. If we are right and we have power, then we're going to kill. And then we tend to judge. This is even without thinking. We get angry, and then the ego fights to the death. These are the human tendencies, almost impossible to overcome. And that's why over 100 million human beings perished in war in the last century alone. So the intervention is you need to have failed attempts because people have to fail in doing what they know for sure the right thing is, and then they may begin to look at the art of execution principles. And if you are not in the C-suite, if you are in the C-suite, if you like to adopt the principles now, you are free to do so. But if you have to pitch it to somebody else, approach it with extreme caution, understanding the tendency is to bash you over the head if you dare to speak against them because they are extremely smart. That's why that's where they are, and you are not. All right, so be careful. The connectors code is they must understand the universal principles of harmonizing energy as well as the quality principles, the four pillars of the art of execution framework. And then they also have to learn the local systems. Otherwise, you are in the blind. When I went to Symantec, when I went to DirecTV, when I went to Molina, all the terminologies, acronyms, and systems and people were all different. So I was deaf, dumb, and mute for a good number of months. It takes a long time to learn the local systems and to gain mastery. I would say 3 to 5 years minimum to if you work really hard. And once again, a connector can go, I want to be honest, I want to tell them the truth. Don't do that because when you're standing high above on the ledge of a cliff, and if you push against the wall, you put yourself off the wall. So be quiet, be mum. Here's Perry the Falcon. It goes into a stoop. What is a stoop? That's when he folds his wings, or she goes into a free dive with the pull of the gravity. It will accelerate and accelerate until it can reach up to 245 miles per hour, the highest speed clocked of a peregrine falcon. And Perry lives in Rome, and here is Perry coming down, snatching a starling from a flock of starlings in mid-flight. So Perry calculates the speed of the flight of the starling, and he comes in ahead of it to intercept it. And in a similar manner, we understand quality means you have quality processes and people who have the skills to design the quality processes and to improve the processes. So that's where our intercepting sector should be, the vector should be, and not to go in and destroy people. Understand the big picture, see the solution generically and locally, using paradigms aligned with principles. You commit yourself to do it, and you rally other people if you can talk. In some cases, for years, I'm not able to talk, then I don't talk. I just do what I believe is right. And if time comes for me to go, then I go. And then to be able to get to be to personal full stoop, no wasted thoughts and no wasted movements in execution. So there's velocity, focus, and intensity in how you work. If people want to accept new paradigms, fine. If not, just do your own thing. And when time is up, you can tell yourself, I've done my personal best. And if you have done your best, there's nothing better you can do. You can look up Coach John Wooden and YouTube him. He's a master of principles. We want to harmonize with the needs and the lack and the ignorance and the dysfunction of the organization personally, with other people as well, and with the organization. To harmonize, if it's really necessary to fire somebody, fine. But that is really after this due process and it's fair and so on. And it also should produce a culture of quality rather than a culture of fear and intimidation, where the swamp continues and can never be drained, and the mosquito infestation will only get worse and worse. And again, do not work on special cases, work on common cause. I'll end on this slide. Thank you so much for your time. The martial arts goal is to accomplish the loving protection of all things. Here we're talking about quality, members, customers happy, doctors are happy, people get what they want, and there's prosperity and there's peace. So may peace prevail on earth, and have a good time. Thank you so much.